Hello and welcome to Builders, the podcast where we explore the stories and strategies of visionary entrepreneurs building the future of business and technology. I'm Haynes, and today I'm joined by Nuno Pereira, co-founder and CEO of Paynest, a fast-growing FinTech company that aims to be the future of employee finance. With a background in engineering and significant experience at Amazon and McKinsey, Nuno has led Paynest to rapid growth across Europe. He helps businesses manage the most important financial needs of employees everywhere, solving burning needs from finance and HR teams while helping employees improve their financial well-being. We'll explore Nuno's journey, the evolution of Paynest, and how FinTech, AI, and smart HR tech are converging to build better, more supportive workplaces. Nuno, a warm welcome to the podcast. How's it going?
Thank you so much, Lee. What an intro. Is it me or someone else? But yes, thank you.
Yeah, lovely to have you here. Let's start, shall we? The story behind Paynest. Let's start at the beginning or even before the beginning. Tell us a bit about your background and what led to Paynest, first of all.
Yes, so actually I did study aerospace engineering, which is not, I guess, the most common. And within aerospace, I did AI. Back then, it was not that known, let's say, or I tell to a lot of people like it was more AI was the future back then. Now it's clearly the present. It's clearer now. So that's what I did back in Portugal and in Holland, and then pretty much I worked in all of the place in 3 continents between engineering in Bombardier, then at McKinsey where I found a big passion for FinTech, then actually joined the biggest startup in the world, Amazon. And when I became a dad, decided, okay, time to come back home and do something different and started Paynest. And this was middle of 2022. So just a bit over 2 years now.
Nice. And how did your engineering background and your time at McKinsey and Amazon shape the founding of Paynest?
So to be honest, a lot. So to start, what maybe if you want trigger to start Paynest and actually be a founder was linked to. I always like to build stuff. If you want the kind of like the engineer mentality, and I always felt while I had a lot of fun in McKinsey and Amazon, I always felt was not for me long term. Advising others on what to do instead of doing it myself is not really my DNA. And Amazon, just for the size, you end up, actually having a lot of impact and improving a lot of the business, but you are just one piece out of a really, really big puzzle. So I always wanted that. And I think fatherhood really helped me, do the switch. I just wanted to, build something that I could tell, my daughter, now I have 2, but tell my daughter, daddy did this, right? And it was the same time when I came back to Portugal, there was a big, if you want, financial crisis in terms of financial well-being crisis in Portugal. I wanted to also contribute to that. So that's what caused me, lead me to create Paynest. In terms of McKinsey and Amazon, both helped me a lot be the founder that I am today. So I think with McKinsey, got me a lot out of my comfort zone. Let's say there was clearly a before and after McKinsey Nuno version, let's say, before I was an engineer.
And that's where you transition really from tech to FinTech, right?
Big time. But I think also on the personal side, like I used to be much more deductive, bottom-up, etc. And McKinsey just helped me, see the big picture, be much more 80-20, get used to the unknown. So on the personal side, helped me a lot. And then the big passion for FinTech. Like I knew nothing about banking before. And I ended up part of 4 years McKinsey, roughly 2.5, 3 out of those 4 was mostly working in the financial services space. So like FinTech. So that's where the passion kind of appeared. And Amazon, I think was more, if you want, like the startup toolkit, let's say. So I do think they are, literally the biggest startup in the world. So in the terms of like their processes, the way they clearly define, things like their leadership principles, and now we copy the Paynest. Like we have set of values and we review everyone against those values in terms of like the company culture. I think that's quite important. And for an engineer, not that obvious to start with. So like there was another big learning from Amazon, and then the writing culture. It was very different from a consulting business where you end up doing mostly PowerPoint and talking to others. In Amazon, everything is actually written up, and I think it helps a lot in decision making, in being much more efficient. The way we communicate things like at Paynest, across the team, if it's a nice, well written doc, blurb, etc. Not only I think helps to get to a better decision, because as you're writing up, you have to be much more concise, much more clear if you are speaking. But also then for everyone else, instead of having a meeting to discuss what happened, you just read it and it takes you 2 minutes and you get all the knowledge, right? So I think those two, let's say, schools or trends of thought, I really copied, pieces of both to be, who I am today, for sure.
And you mentioned, the values of like Amazon and kind of copying that kind of principle over to Paynest. But Amazon's also really well known for its customer obsession, right? Were there some key lessons that you took from there that now shape how you lead and how you're scaling Paynest?
So on that one in particular, actually, it's one of our values. We call it differently, but still, like, and I keep telling, the tech team, the product team, the sales team, like anything we do, even in terms of building, has to start with the client problem. And if we don't know that, we have a massive issue. And I keep challenging them, right? Like, we are building a product that is used, yes, by employees, the people like us, but also used typically by CFOs and CHROs. So if you are not a CFO, then means that you need to really know the problem before you start doing anything, a mock-up, a design, anything. So really start with that as much as we can, and then I challenge even design team. Like, I don't care about a cool design or a cool box. I care about, does it solve the problem? And if you don't know the problem, then you can worry about colors later.
Really, really good point. And talk to us a little bit about the problem that Paynest is solving. Why does Paynest exist?
Yeah, so we started actually on the financial well-being angle, but actually quickly evolved because we saw actually the problem is bigger than that. So today, actually, for companies, is really complicated to manage just something as basic as paying employees, right? They typically have, a platform or something where they process their salaries. They might have something else for like advance of payment, incentives, expenses. There are tons of expense management solutions which are quite good. But at the end, for the company perspective, it's really hard to manage that HR or finance tech stack. Like HR people today have to manage Excel's different platforms, and very often, after they finish whatever they do, they still hand over to an accounting team or finance team that does the rest. So what we want to do is be that single platform that empowers, HR and finance teams to do it A to Z in one place, increasing efficiency and control. That's pretty much what we do. And as a byproduct of that, we actually bring a lot of benefits to the end user, to the employee. And we improve metrics like retention, financial well-being, satisfaction. But the main problem we're solving is actually the financial, if you want, wellness of companies and the way they pay their employees.
Yep. And we'll dive into a little bit on the employee well-being and the rest of it. But given your diverse experience, how do you balance the technical, financial, and also like human aspects of leading a fintech company like Paynest?
That's a big challenge. That's a big challenge. But I'll start. I think leading in general, I learned a lot. I mean, compared to previous experience, I say sometimes as a joke, I used to work way longer hours, for example, at McKinsey than I do today. And I think today, positioned at where we are, where I lead a team of 20 people. We have a lot of clients. We have over 40,000 people using the platform every day, so like end users.
Nice.
At the end, like a big impact of my work is not just the crunching hours, let's say, is actually good decisions. And to make good decisions to start with, I need to be, in a really good, well-being, mental space. And that has, many components. So I need to be, good physically, I need to have good sleep. I need to be good mentally. And for me, sports is a good way to like do my, if you want my mental meditation, I do it through sports. And of course, also financially, I have to be with financial stress, right? But so I think being, in mentally where I need to be to make the best decisions and not work until 2 a.m. every day because it won't be sustainable long run. I think it's a key component to it. And the second one is the people that, we do it with. So me, my co-founder, and the other, 18 of us. And I do, challenge a lot of my friends and other founders that, building like anything else, I only have one type of problems, which is people problems. Like we don't have a tech issue or a product issue or a sales issue. Just have most probably the wrong people driving it. So that's where the component, which for me was not that straightforward as an engineering background, to surround myself with good people and actually assess them much more on the culture than on the technical aspects, because that's the CV, to be honest, pretty much can tell, and one call can actually tell. But assess, is it the right culture? Is it the right alignment? And already happened to us, even though we just been doing this for just over 2 years, that we had someone that met all the technical aspects, but culture not there, and failed to succeed with us. And the other way around, someone that was the right culture fits and was not delivering on that aspect, but actually there was a role for that person somewhere else and actually ended up contributing a lot. Or there was not, but like the cultural element is so important. So I think if I focus on being in the right place to make the right decisions and surround myself with people that are aligned with the vision and with the company culture, then everything else is pretty much much easier to solve.
Yeah, and that's not an easy balance to strike, right? That kind of finding the right people for specific roles and kind of combining the hard skills with the cultural or kind of soft aspects as well. But were there any other kind of really big challenges that you faced with Paynest during its early stages, and how did you overcome them?
I think I'll split into things, so like personal challenges, if you want, more linked to me as a leader leading Paynest, and then to the company itself. So me as a leader, I'll just enumerate two. So one, from me on the personal side, when I started Paynest, actually, I did a big gamble a bit on the personal side all in one go. It was not just, leaving a nice paycheck at Amazon to start something much more risky, but I did a lot of, if you want, decisions in one go. Like I moved countries again for like the 9th time. I became a dad for the first time. I ended up buying a house back in Lisbon. I haven't been living here for 12 years. So I ended up changing a lot on the personal side in one go. So it was a bit overwhelming to start with.
So why not start a company at the same time? Huh?
Exactly. I was like, parentalhood, sure, moving again, sure, etc. Why not, putting Paynest into the mix and the certainty on the paycheck as well. So that was, a challenge. And if I regretted anything, was not having done some of this stuff even earlier, right? So I think, definitely I'll not have postponed anything, but still it was a challenge. I cannot deny. And the second one, I think the role of a founder can be, apart from being quite lone, etc., even though we are two, I think the changes of roles is actually something that I was not prepared, if you want, before. Like in the beginning, I was almost focusing only on the problem and getting a team in place. And then I quickly shifted to like sales mode, almost 100% to get the first client validation. And then I almost stopped selling to do fundraising. After we got money in the bank, I went back to like a sprint of hiring and then a sprint of sales. So that, changing of ship all the time is actually something that is not that, if you want, spoken of or that easy to digest, because you are full throttle in one thing and then you can stop and go to somewhere else where the biggest fire is actually burning. So those two, I think, were the biggest, if you want, kind of on the personal side, biggest challenges. In terms of Paynest per se, clearly, before we closed our seed round, the normal, we had some funding before, but running out of cash, and that's always, all stressful because we had, already providing to quite a few employees and their families. But then I think when we realized that what we're doing just on the financial wellness space was not enough, because companies were not ready yet to actually, spend, if you want, dollars just on financial well-being, and where we had to complement with much more of the company, if you know, problems per se of paying their employees, something as as basic as expense management, but of course we do it differently. We're powered by AI, etc. So I think having that shift of, yes, we are there for the employees, yes, but we have to be much more vocal, or where we need to the companies, much more concrete, much more tangible, to make them pay for it. Because for the employee, we don't monetize in any point in time B2C. So for the person, we are just free, if you want, perks and financial well-being, but we have to make money some other ways. So we need to find ways to prove quicker impact to companies. So that pivot was actually quite important, and it was not easy to do, because clients, they say, yes, we care about, and this makes a lot of sense, but still the urgency to buy is not, it was not there. So we had to reinvent product wise. Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned the funding and the seed round there. So Paynest fairly recently secured, what, 3 million euros, was it?
Yeah,
in
correct.
funding.
So
Congratulations.
thank you.
Nice. But what are the main goals for the company's expansion then in the coming years? What's the goal with the funding?
Yeah, so right now we are concentrating ourselves in the Portuguese market. It's quite greenfield in a lot of solutions we have, and of course, being here, most of the people being based here, we do have clearly an edge. There's like a first mover kind of like element, but already present in Spain. We have offices in Barcelona. We also expanding to France. So the plan is really to keep building and improving the product where we know that our clients are already willing to pay for, and we're being very easily, cross-selling or upselling new products, but then really just expansion both in Portugal and Spain and France for now. And then, of course, then, EU, we are coming. Our product is ready, but go to market, we still need to have boots in the ground. And so now we're focusing just on those three markets. Yeah.
Yep. Nice. And to talk a little bit about kind of financial literacy and the employee well-being that you mentioned before. So one of Paynest's core missions is to improve employee financial well-being, right? It's not the area that you monetize on, like you said, but and this is, I would say, a challenge across companies is gaining increasing attention, right? Why is financial literacy so important to you personally, and how does Paynest tackle this at like a practical level?
Yeah. So this one for me was one of the main reasons to start Paynest. And I think there were kind of like three realizations in my if career. So the first one, I was 23 and I just, graduated from aerospace engineering and I had to fill my first time my taxes. And I just realized, holy shit, like I know how a plane flies, which is not that straightforward. And I have no idea how to fill in taxes or manage my finances, like zero idea. First realization, if you want. Fast forwarding a few years, I was at McKinsey working with banks. And I realized actually the most profitable product for a bank is actually current accounts. So people that give free money to the bank for the bank to do whatever they want with it. And I was one of those that, I could, save every month, was where I was educated, but I had no idea what to do with it, how to invest, etc. And that wake up call, like, holy shit, I'm helping a bank how to increase current accounts, and I'm the one putting all the money in current accounts. So it was, if you want, number two. And then when I moved back to Portugal, it was not only, again, not as big a financial crisis of 2008 to 12 when I left, but it was pretty severe. And it was at the same time where a few studies came, and one of them from the EU saying that by 2060, so when I will be, let's say, retiring, the pension of the Europeans and the Portuguese, roughly those two are in line, will be around 38% of your last salary. So basically, you are working your ass off for 40, 45 years, and then reach 67. It's going to happen, quite soon, and your pension will be less than half of your salary. So you need to take control over, your finances today. So it is pretty much like one of the biggest deals we have. And I tell a lot of clients in a provocative way, do you pay for health insurance? Okay, amazing. Did you think about, mental well-being during COVID? Okay, amazing. You have way more employees under financial stress than with a broken leg. So if you help them fix a broken leg, which is a small share of your employee population, why don't focus on the elephant in the room, which is financial wellness? So that's, what really like made us have such a strong, vision, conviction on that. And the companies can be the solution, right? Because if they get on the solution, I need to find a way to do directly B2C, which I need to monetize. So either I ask the person to pay for it, or I monetize with their data, and I became nothing but impartial. So I really think the avenue of schools, and you are early on, but it's not our focus, or later on, companies can actually be the solution. So that's pretty much on the problem space. Concretely, how we do it, actually, we have leveraged AI massively. So basically, when you download Paynest for the first time, what we do in real time constantly is two things. One is try to understand your, let's say, gaming personality. So what is the best way for you to learn? And an example. If you are a competitive person, maybe showing you a leaderboard on your financial literacy versus others can actually motivate you to learn more. If you are not a competitive person, maybe it's more like levels, like Duolingo does. So we do that in real time, keep categorizing people based on their preferences of learning. And the second one, we try to understand where you are in your financial journey and what you want to learn more about. Is it investments? Is it savings? Is it your monthly, family budget? So by crossing those two, we have basically our own content that we push to each employee with whatever is relevant for them to make them learn the most. And then in any of those articles, the person can actually clarify questions with a certified financial coach, both via call or via message. But that's personalization element we do in real time in the app using AI actually is what leads us to our numbers. So we have over 50% of the employees of our clients engaged and learned through Paynest. Over 50%.
Nice.
We're talking about a boring topic. I'm not teaching you how to learn a language before you travel. It's something pretty boring.
It's kind of boring, but people realize maybe necessary.
Yes.
Or don't. Yeah.
But it's a challenge. It's a challenge because it's boring. So but it's also something that if you do it well, you don't see results short term, right? So that combination makes something that is very easy for you to postpone to next year, postpone to next month. So that's why we have to be so mindful on how can we make sure it seems as personalized as it can to you. Because if you are someone with minimum wage, if I send you a push, do you know how to score an ETF? I mean, you'll most probably just uninstall the app on the spot, right? And the same vice versa. So that's why we try to personalize as much as we can, and then we end up actually helping people quite a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a super important point that you make about this kind of financial stress, right? Because I was also looking at studies and saw one that found that around 60%. I'd imagine it's even more now. But 60% of employees say that finances are their top source of stress, right? And so even financially stressed employers are twice as likely to look for a new job, right? And hence the incentive for companies here. Yeah. And you've been talking about this real-time personalized financial coaching and education that Paynest is offering, basically. How do you think this differentiates your platform compared to other tools or similar platforms?
Yeah, I think, by the way, just to add, I think you're absolutely right in terms of like convincing the company to pay for it. There's really like the retention element. We do it a lot, but it's also like the productivity element. And we do it, of course, with our products we have, but this one in particular is a study from PwC, I think dated last year, that looked at, employees in Europe. And on average, people spend 3 hours a week during their working time worrying about finances. So it's basically, it's like you're giving Friday afternoon off to all your employees and not off for them to disconnect. It's off for them to be worried and come back even less productive later, right? So it's a massive pain to people. I think the way we differentiate on this versus other platforms is one, definitely on the gamification element. And actually we are working with the university on this. So we do a lot of research on the side, which means that we also need to do the state of the art, understand what is out there, etc. And we're looking. It was super interesting. We're looking at what exists out there. There are tons of gamified experiences, things like Duolingo for languages, but the best one or the most spread one on the financial space is actually Monopoly. So there are not many gamified solutions to teach people how to manage their money, except one created, decades ago, which is arguably not the best one either, right?
That's maybe not why it was created, right?
That's one big caveat I would say. But I think just concretely, having that literacy and financial wellbeing component within an app that people actually use by needs almost every day, because you submit an expense, because you want to see your pay slip, because you want to, check something else with your employer, then that's actually the right place. It would be very different to convince someone to install financial being Duolingo that is just literacy, right? So that's why by having that in an app that people actually need to use and use as part of the daily work, then becomes a much easier avenue to, yes, let me actually check the notification and read a bit more. Let me clarify one or two questions. So I think the channel in this case is as important and as, if you want to differentiate it, it is the product per se, if not more. Yeah.
And is there any success story from a client company where Paynest has measurably improved employees' financial health or engagement, their
Actually,
financial well-being?
yes,
Now's your time to shout.
no. Yes, I mean, we do have a lot of metrics. Again, when we think about financial wellness specifically, it's something that is not the easy way to measure because first, I don't have the bank account of the person to see whether their financial wealth increase, and second, something quite long term. But we do measure constantly things like financial stress, engagement with financial coaches. So the two main metrics I want to mention is, again, over 50% of people last year got financially educated via us, and over 40% reported decreases in financial stress by using Paynest. But I think there was one concrete, if you want to employ example of a large, one of the largest retailers in Portugal that really shocked me because again, for us it might be a bit more around, how can I improve my taxes? How can I, invest better? We have a lot of questions around those, but we also help financial stress on more day-to-day things, right? So we have other products like, for example, the salary on demand. It helps employees avoid debt when they are at needs by giving them basically free cash, of course advancing from their wages, but it gives them free cash. And one example of one employee that we interviewed, I think it was last year or even the year before that, it was an employee that has happened to him twice. And it was basically in the supermarket, and it was about 24th, 25th of the month, almost about to pay check, and actually his card didn't pass. Basically, he didn't have enough funds in his account to pay the groceries with the two kids. And the two previous times that happened, one of them he ended up removing, yogurts, products, whatever, and repass the card, check again, and continue. While there's a queue, kids asking why, etc. The second time, he ended up actually on the spot select, buy now, pay later, and paying massive interest. The third time, he had Paynest. So he just withdrew €4 of his paycheck, no fees, no interest, went on in his life, and then got deducted a few days later. And that specific event, we not only reduced massively the financial stress of that person that has happened to him twice, but we managed to save him a lot of euros of interest that they've paid otherwise, right? On the spot, because we're able to give, that instant cash based on company's rules. I mean, it's not us, we're just a channel. The company gives that. But it was another concrete way how we were helping on financial stress of day to day. Yeah.
Yep. Really nice. And let's talk a little bit technology and AI, product innovation here. So you've mentioned AI in the expense management solution, right? You mentioned earlier. Can you share more about how that works? What kind of efficiencies or personalization that is brought to users?
Yeah, so on our expense management solution is actually where we use AI the most. So even when you think about compared to other solutions out there, most of them, and I'm oversimplifying, is just a workflow, right? You submit an expense, it goes through approvals, and then might yes or not include the instant payment at the end. So what we just realized is actually humans are very bad, analyzing rules and making judgment call. And second, this takes time. So what we do is basically in real time, as soon as the employee submits an expense, we automatically validate it versus the company policy. So what happened, and let's say during last year, just looking at numbers, what happened was 40% of the expense submitted in Paynest, they were automatically approved because we know it fits whatever criteria. It was not an amount big enough that the employer still wants to validate manually himself or herself. So we're able to instantly approve the expense and instantly pay the employee on the spot. So you just submit an expense, and as soon as you pay, you take a picture, you get the money back. wow experience versus today, both from the employee perspective, but managers. A lot of people spend, a lot of time approving expenses and checking
this must
against
save
rules.
days of work, right? Days of manual.
Days of work.
Yeah.
And then for all the others, we do give still this autopilot, if you want, of approval to the manager to help him see, okay, there are maybe 100 expenses left that are a big enough amount for you to review manually. And out of those 100, there are 80 that are good to go from our side, and there are 20 which are not, and these are the reasons why. So actually, on average, we reduce costs, employee-related expenses costs, around 15% to our clients, with small things, automatically validate if the company, the fiscal number is incorrect. By law, you cannot reimburse an expense if the fiscal number is not there, for example. And that number, we read it automatically using, computer vision. We don't let the employee just, tell whatever he wants on the app, of course. Something as silly as, you report you're on a trip, you drive from Lisbon to Madrid, and you report X amount of kilometers. But Google Maps says, something else. So we end up actually finding a lot of ways to not only reduce work, so we save about 90% of the time takes by approval processes, and in the past we're reducing costs because we increase that control and that human biased validation.
And you were talking also earlier about Paynest having or evolving into this holistic employee finance platform, right? So incorporating payroll and incentives, financial planning, and all the rest of it. What's driven that kind of shift to making it this kind of holistic platform, basically?
To be honest, it was pure client push. I was not even thinking about it in the beginning. We just started to solve a concrete problem, and then we found out actually most of our clients have another problem, and if we solve them, they would love to have it in the same platform. And then a lot of companies are actually building. And we have some of our clients that they spend a lot of money before us to build their own, employee app proposition where they put, whatever they want there. But actually, most of them, they want the same, is to pay efficiently to their employees. So things like, paycheck, documentation, expenses, etc. It's in common for most companies. So we started to build all of those actually by client push, basically. And right now, in Portugal, we already do payroll. So actually we do A to Z, all the biggest, if you want, again, financial needs of between companies and employees. So of course, an employee can, do things like submit holidays, do our inputs needed for payroll, and actually the company can do the payroll, because at the end, even the payroll problem is not, a super hard one per se, but is one where, needs inputs from the expense management platform, from the HR platform, from multiple others. And we just soon realize actually we have all those elements. So we don't need to integrate with someone else to do payroll, actually do it ourselves. And right now we're doing this in Portugal because this is something, more complex than expenses, but for all other products, even incentives. We announced last weeks with one of the the biggest law firms in Portugal, and now they use Paynest as their long-term incentive strategy, the same way that Amazon, Visa, Mastercard, or big tech uses. But for most companies, a bit out of reach, right? They want to do their own long-term incentive plan, but with Paynest we help them do it, right? So an employee can just install Paynest, log in, and they can see their vested amount, their invested, can cash out whatever they want. They can see if the phantom stock price increases. So we build all that gamification element within the app, which of course is very relevant for more like white collars or top tier employees.
And what's your vision for Paynest moving forward? Is it really to kind of roll out these other products such as payroll in other markets, or are there any products that are currently missing that you're going to be looking to incorporate as well? What's the vision?
So to be honest, with payroll and the HR piece, we pretty much done to be the big vision of the all-in-one platform to pay your employees, basically. So that's the, if you want, vision part number one, really important. And the second one is be as country agnostic as possible, tackling Europe first. Europe is actually quite unique in the sense that we have and we can talk about it. We have a big push on like having almost like a common regulation for all countries with the multiple AI Act and others on the financial space. And a lot of companies actually work without borders within Europe, right? They have employees all over the place. So we do want to be that platform that tackles all the payments to employees across Europe first, because there is so many, good tailwinds to help us do it in Europe versus other countries. And then we want to build it in a super scalable way. So right now we don't actually do things like self-service, because we focus on like more large enterprises, but we want to make sure we can tackle all of those. And for that, we have to, rebuild our tech stack to make sure that, a company with 10 people can just, install Paynest and off they go. Right now, we are on purpose not focusing there, but something that we want to get there to get that scale, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And zooming out a little bit to talk about, say, the fintech industry as a whole, I'm interested to kind of hear your take on challenges you see ahead for fintech companies. Especially those operating in your space in B2B, as we've been talking about.
Yeah, to be honest, on the fintech, challenges. I'm a very positive guy, right? So I see more like as opportunities to do better, or opportunities to do more. So I think, look, on innovation space, and we mentioned like quickly on that other example, I think there was a lot of innovation more on like monetizing people on the pay now, pay later, etc. There's also some push more recently, like the save now, buy later. But I think, with embedded finance from A to Z and having actually companies on board there, you can actually do much more. So things like, start with your salary and end up, having a easy financial plan from the salary all the way to buying a house, right? And tell things like to your employee, look, your company's on board, there is this platform. Why don't you do 3-4 extra shifts, and then you are able to buy your house earlier or buy an iPhone quicker, right? So really take it from A to Z. I think now has been mostly from the employee to the expenditure portion, but not connecting all the way from their income, their savings, etc. So I think that's a big, if you want, opportunity area that I think is untouched, but I think with companies we can actually get there. But overall, when you think about fintech, I think it was a stay from McKinsey, I think last year or 2 years before. I think out of all the banking industry, less than 5% is fintech, right? So there is tons of opportunities to grow and challenge the incumbents for sure. And when you think about B2B, it is, I think is way less advanced, right? Like you see, for example, Revolut starting Revolut business kind of recently, but after they cracked almost, let's say, all the major use cases B2C, right? So, and they did it after. So I think on the company space, for multiple reasons, industry specificities, country specificities, it is much more uncracked than it is, the B2C fintech space where you have, N26 or Revolut or others already perfect aware. I mean, there are multiple, investment platforms. I think there is much more opportunity B2B than B2C for sure. Yeah.
And with your background in engineering, your experience with the algorithms and AI, how do you see AI reshaping financial services moving forward, especially in kind of personal finance and payroll?
Yeah, so I think massively. I think I just told you example of expenses. So there was already tax solutions in place, sure, to make the process digital, but not reinvent the process. Right? There were solutions to teach people about how to manage their finances, but not how to teach people how to manage their finances. So I think AI personalization and making, on the education element is clear. You can literally make, an n equals to 1 to everyone. Like one quick example I give is, going back to the leaderboard element, right? So for me, a leaderboard motivates me a lot. Like if I'm not first, I'll just go and run. And as soon as we went to leaderboard within Paynest for us as employees, I was not number one, and I went straight into the app, tried to increase my financial level for sure, because what motivates me. That's only the case, by the way, around 25% of the population. For all the others, a leaderboard demotivates them actually. But for example, for me, I could also be motivated by going up my own levels, like Duolingo style. So what we can do actually with AI is make these, as narrow as an n equals 1, right? I can be someone which is competitive, but also a bit on the other side. I might want to know a bit of investment, also savings. So when actually can strip down into, for Nuno, this is the profile of Nuno, which will be just equal to none, just to me. And with AI, we can do it. Before we couldn't. Yeah.
And obviously, we've been talking about it here, but more and more kind of fintech firms are now embedding AI into their products, just like you guys are. But they are particularly in areas like risk modeling and personalization, fraud detection, and this kind of brings up the question of kind of data privacy and security, which are increasingly under the spotlight. Right? How does Paynest ensure that sensitive financial data remains secure? This must be a really hot topic for you guys, right?
Is super hot and a topic that I love to talk about, right? Because unlike others, we're very blunt in the sense that we don't monetize data of employees because we make money with a B2B SaaS fee to companies, and we don't do any other ways which are very tempted, right? Like since I started Paynest, I can count not even with my both hands amount of banks that approach us because we have very powerful data to help their underwriting engines or give them leads to their sales teams. So it's something that I think is an opportunity if you want, or something that it might make founders say yes to quick money. We have actually not done it, so it's a topic that I love to talk about because we are so in all the shades of gray. We're pretty white in that area that we don't share it with anyone. We comply with all the ISO main certifications in Europe, and we don't do it. And the second point I want to mention is, and Europe gets bashed a lot in terms of innovation compared to the US, especially recently.
Yeah, right.
Globally bashed. And I think, a lot of things, rightly so, and we can definitely do better. But I think on regulating some of these AI data privacy elements, which are critical, right? And something that once you give your data, it's very hard to kind of like get it back. So I think doing that across Europe can not only ensure that we're doing the right things like we are or others doing the right things in the long run, but also can ensure that we do it in an accessible market, which is worthy enough the investment of us, VCs and others, right? Because if I'll be doing this to comply with Portuguese regulation, which is 10 million people, there's no VC to invest in it, right? But if I do the same to comply with, population which is over 400 million, bigger than the US, because all Europe kind of goes by the same laws, then actually could be a very nice sweet spot, not only for growth investment, but also to do it in the long term well, because we're taking care of data of employees in the right way. Yeah.
We were talking about privacy there quite a bit, but it's a bit of a kind of conflict going on in terms of like you can only be so personal. You can only reach like certain levels of personalization if you kind of have access, obviously granted access to user data. But where do you stand on the balance as a leader, the balance between personalization and privacy?
I'll give you a good example, concretely, and then we can generalize. So for us, of course, it will help a lot in our coaching element to have things like, open banking and know your different bank accounts and where you have your money. We actually don't do it. We don't do it because, again, we don't want to put another roadblock in terms of the user experience to have to like reconnect with banks, etc. And second, also maybe is not that needed, right? If I know just enough about your preferences and the way you engage with the app, I might be 80-20 enough to give you something which is personalized enough but not creepy enough. Like, Lee just had a baby. Here you go. A voucher to buy diapers. So on that sense, I think we have been. We do have. With AI because we can write this n equals 1, but I think also because of our offering, we don't need necessarily to go that creepy if you want step or like knowing too much that potentially could actually backfire in terms of trust and everything else, right? So it's a very conscious decision, and we've had that thought since the very beginning, and we decided not to, and we keep as such. Yeah.
And I can imagine what you mentioned that Paynest was founded in 2022, so still relatively young, received funding. And one challenge, obviously, is kind of balancing scaling fast building the company up, and also this ethical responsibility. It goes across industries and different companies. What's your take on that trade-off? How do you personally approach that, the trade-off of kind of scaling fast and ethical responsibility?
Yeah, look, it's a tough one. To be very honest, it's a tough one. So I think, not scaling, not scaling at a good pace is just not, feasible, both from my time commitment, investments, etc. But also when you think about even where we started in Portugal, like our market just way too small. So if we don't start it's national from the beginning, we have no business, and that's why even when you look at ratio, etc., the share of Portuguese unicorns for our population is actually quite high, because we have a crazy debt valley after pre-seed, seed, because you actually don't make it, because it's much harder. You have to go international from the very beginning. But if you do make that, then actually you end up being way before pre-seed is there already with international clients, with multiple languages, multiple markets, and you already cracked problems that some other company in the US would have only dealt with it post Series C, right? So I think scaling, it is necessary for us, and for us also being based here. But then I think, especially thinking about money and how taboo it is and how critical it is to people, we don't want to ever scale at the cost of stopping impartial, monetizing the data of people, etc. So we have our red lines and we don't cross those, right? Yep. But then within that playing field, in my perspective, then we have to do whatever it takes to grow quicker. Yeah.
Yeah, no, well put. And are there any emerging trends or technologies, generally speaking, and within fintech, that you think could really disrupt the current landscape, disrupt it, or that you're really excited about? Disrupt the landscape kind of maybe sounds a little bit too negative. I don't mean it in that way.
No. I mean, I see it always as a positive thing, right? Let me be very honest. So I think there was. I mean, start more micro and zooming out. So there was a concrete one that just came like mandatory in Europe, which is instant payments, right? Which is something that's we've looked at it for a while, but it was not mainstream yet, right? Because again, the challenge is not the 5%, is a 95%. If people still bank with Caixa Bank, something like that, etc., and they don't have SEPA Instant enabled by design, then the experience is shit, right? You need to force them to have Revolut or N26 and then do it from there. So I think now real-time payments in Europe are there for everyone, and even mandatory, pushed by law, right? So I think this one is a massive, again, more than challenge, a massive opportunity. Things like, you should be able to get your money instantly from anything, expenses, salary, whatever, through your friends. Again, B2C, which is much more developed. But there is no good reason why you need to pay an expense to a company and wait a week, 2 weeks. No, it should be like on the second, not even an hour, right? Yep. So that's for sure one. AI can enable that, right? To make, the process going from dummy manual to dummy digital to actually smart and digital. So AI is is the second kind of trend there. But then I really think looking at it holistically as, finance comes more and more B2B, then we can actually help people, do much more the A to Z kind of like financial planning, financial decisions on fintech that it was, to be honest, not available before. I mean, I'll give you a great example. If you ask most of, the HR teams of companies in Europe, how much are you going to pay, Lee next month? But some of them, they don't know, because they might have, different things. Your holidays is different, or you became a dad, or your tax bracket changes, etc. So even HR teams don't know how much you're going to pay you next month. So how can you do proper financial planning, right? So when we bring fintech more B2B, as real-time payments become not a problem, so you can pay instantly, and we can move processes which were manual to digital now to smart and digital, then you should be able to really have that finance control A to Z, which obviously going to bring massive impact to everyone. Yeah.
And before we wrap up here, I've got one final question. If you could give one piece of advice to a founder starting their journey in fintech, in HR tech today, what would it be?
Yeah, I'll give two. So speed and people. So really surround yourself, really think twice, thrice on people, the cliche of hire slow, fire fast, etc. So really think about people and which culture you want and what people you want with you to build it. And second, in terms of speed, now with tools like Lovable and others, you can literally within a few hours have a prototype to show to a client and see if they buy after 2 hours of work, right? So you don't need anymore to do hire tech team thinking about what they need with tech stack, etc. No, just focus much more on speed and clients and iterate really fast. Even if you have the problem like Lovable had, right? They went live in November last year, and after I think 3 or 4 weeks, they had to rewrite their whole code base because we were going too fast. I'm not expecting that much volume, so just the code broke, right? So that's it's still a problem, but is a good problem to have, right? So really think about how can you do as scrappy, as fast as possible in front of clients. Make sure you actually solve a pain, and then you can think about how to make the solution more sustainable, etc., etc. So I'll just say really those two, people and speed. Yeah.
Really, really good. And anything else to add before I wrap up here?
No, it was a great pleasure. Talking about financial well-being is a massive topic, is elephant in the room. So the more people we get talking about it, the better. And indeed, Europe, there's a lot to improve. But I think we're doing some things well, and if more people do things well, like we're all trying, I think we can be in a very different place in a few years from now. Yeah,
I completely agree. It's a topic that's not talked about enough. So it's been a real pleasure having you on the podcast today, Nuno. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Lee.
And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow, subscribe, and share the podcast. Until next time, stay curious and keep on building. We'll see you soon.